Hello, I'm Anthony. Welcome to the Roland Zenology Pro tutorial series. This is the last episode in the series, preset deep dive number 3. And today we're going to look at a drum preset. This is still a fundamental feature of the Zenology Pro. We've not left its primary interface, but when you're dealing with drum sounds, you've got a completely different interface, as you can see here. Just before we embark on that, let me point you at the Patreon link in the description below, which is a great way to help support my channel. This is what I do full time these days. Alternatively, you can press the join button to become a YouTube channel member. Huge thanks to everybody who has so far. Okay, without further ado, let's make a start. We've got two different kinds of interface. We've got the classic overhead drum kit view, where we can see each of the kit pieces, but we've also got a pad view, which can be toggled between these two buttons here. We'll deal with the overhead view first. Even though each one of these kit pieces looks identical, they're actually slightly different. There are, as you can see, some divisions on some of the kit pieces that allows us access to multiple different drum instruments within the same kit piece. These cymbals over here, for instance, represent basically stacked cymbals. We've got 3 different cymbals on top of each other. Depending on which one we select, that cymbal is highlighted in the right hand information bar. Now this information bar is the be all and end all when it comes to configuring drum presets, and we'll have a look at each of these settings in turn in due course. Before we do, let's just have a quick look at the top panel. We've got 5 buttons on the top. Each one of these corresponds to a selectable range zone that if I basically click in the kit piece and drag to the left or right, I can choose how much of that thing is applied to the kit piece that I've selected. So when I press the level button, you can see that most of the drum instruments are set to maximum volume. This one isn't, but obviously I can click and drag inside it and change those volume levels. Pan is pretty self-evident, and then we've got attack, decay and release standard envelope settings. Once we've selected one of the kit pieces, so let's select the tom, you can see that it gets highlighted in this information panel on the right hand side. If I click in its name, it opens a browser, a drum browser, through which I can select basically any of the alternatives that I want. So if I'm looking at a tom here, I can filter by just toms, and then it's pretty straightforward for me to preview through them by just basically, I can actually use just my keyboard. If I use my computer keyboard to arrow down, that's going to select the sound, and then I can press the key on the keyboard, which is F2, I think. Yep. Audition each of them in turn, and then once I've chosen the one I want, I can just basically come out of the preset browser, and that's now remembered. I'll just throw that away and get myself back to the standard 808 presets. So let's have a quick run through these controls. The level bar at the top is the same as the one that I can access from the setting inside the interface itself, as is the pan. The mute group option is most important when we look at hats. I'll just select the closed hat, and now you'll see that mute group has been set to 1. You can see we've got 31 different mute groups to play with. That's more than enough. But the closed hat and open hat are assigned to the same mute group. All of the other kit pieces, their mute group is set to off. What this basically means is that when I press one of the notes, there's my open hat. If that's still sounding when another note in the same group is played, all other notes will be muted. So that's classic open hat, closed hat kind of behaviour. If they weren't a member of the same mute group, they would both carry on sounding basically until their full sample length had been played. Key offset is basically an ugly way of describing pitch. So if I play my tom and then start, let's just find it, there it is, and then start bringing my key offset down, you'll hear the pitch being affected. Control click to reset it. And fine tune is simply a similar thing within the range of a single semitone. Control click. Cutoff lets me set a basic LPF frequency cutoff. Brighter, duller. And similarly with resonance, if I crank the resonance right up, that's the resonance making that sound. Should have Insight open really. I shut Insight down because basically when you're dealing with drum kits, you very rarely need to look at spectral analyzers, but it would have helped there. Attack, decay and release, really straightforward envelope stuff. I can demonstrate this with my open hats. Bring some attack in. Get a kind of, I don't know, seashore sort of effect. Similar kind of thing with release. Stick on the open hat to demonstrate this easily enough. There's the natural sound of the drum, unaffected. If I take all of the release off, it's just going to truncate it. Then we've got this output assignment section. You can basically route any of the kit pieces to one of the 6 internal permanent compressors. They're listed down at the bottom. And as we click in the kit piece, you can see that the snare is assigned to comp 5. So if we have a look at compressor 5, that's the compressor curve that's basically dedicated for the snare. As we wander around the rest of the drum kit, you'll see that on this particular preset, none of the other sounds are assigned to compressor 5. So we've basically got a dedicated compressor just for the snare. Where we get to configure exactly how we want that compressor to operate. If you don't want to route one of the kit pieces through a compressor, you don't have to. The cymbals, for instance, go directly to the multi-effects unit. And if you don't want a particular kit piece to go through any of the effects at all, no problem, just select dry. It won't go through the multi-effects, and it won't get routed through one of the compressors either. Over in the pad view, this is pretty confusing actually, because drum kits can contain far more than 16 sounds. In fact, it's quite common for pretty much the entire keyboard to be populated by different drum sounds. So if I press C1, for instance, there we've got preset 34. And if we start stepping up through the key numbers, you can see we've got all sorts of stuff assigned to all these different notes. Well, only 16 pads are actually visible at any given time. So here's C2, which is there. And we can access the individual drum sound from the little click box down below, rather than, I don't really know why they've given you an alternative, it does the same thing. The idea, of course, is this is for physical pieces of hardware that you want to route specifically one-for-one mappings to. I have a Native Instruments machine over here which has 16 pads on it, so I would be able to very easily assign each of the pads to one of these, and then I would just have that visual equivalence. It's just a matter of convenience, really. A couple of other options in these lower panes to have a look at. If I just dial a bit of random pitching, and I can also do the same for pan. Alt pan is a different means of, it's not random because it's basically going to toggle between left and right. If you're wearing headphones, you can hear that basically ping-ponging backwards and forwards between your ears. For 99.9% of the time, you can leave the other 3 options alone. Assign type is when you hit multiple keys of the same drum sound simultaneously. Do you want to let them stack on top of each other, which is the default behavior, or do you only ever want to hear them one at a time, in which case you choose single. Envelope mode is all about if you're playing a very long loop. Just basically, I just found one here that's a pretty long sample. Now I'm holding the key down. As soon as I let go of the key, it stops playing. If I put in no sus mode and hit the key, it's going to play the entire sample until it gets to the end. V control stands for velocity control, and this is very much dependent on the specific drum preset, but some drum presets have got different samples laid for different velocities. This allows you to basically have the full rich feature of the drum set, so I would pretty much never turn it off. If you want to turn it off, you'll basically be able to guarantee that you're going to get exactly the same drum sound, the same sample played regardless of what velocity of key you hit. And then underneath that we've got an individual EQ curve for every single drum sound. Each pad has its own 3-point EQ curve. What was I messing with then? C3 was it? which is pretty self-explanatory. One final option to bring your attention to is the lock button. If I'm editing the closed hi-hats, which is the currently selected kit piece, and press the lock button, now it doesn't matter what keys I press on the keyboard, it's not going to override the options that I'm currently editing. So it's basically, if you're doing some work but you want to listen to some other keys, press the lock button, it'll keep your editing window locked in place. That'll do us for this episode. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please hit the like button. I'll see you next time. Thanks a lot.